The courtroom was full. People whispered. Some stared. Others shook their heads. Then the door opened, and 2 police officers walked in holding a boy in handcuffs. He looked no older than 19. His hair was messy. His eyes were tired. Clothes were worn and too big, but his head was held high. His name was Malik. To everyone in the room, he was just another criminal, another young man caught stealing, lying, breaking the law. The judge didn't even look up. He sat on the bench, with cold eyes and a heavy file in front of him. He had seen hundreds of boys like this. In his mind, Malik was just another one, but Malik was told to stand. The clerk began reading the charges. Malik Davis, age 19, arrested for armed robbery at a convenience store. Suspect was caught running from the scene. No weapon found, but store owner identified him. The crowd whispered again, but Malik stayed calm. The judge finally looked up. His eyes landed on Malik for the first time. Something strange passed across his face. A flicker, a moment of pause, but then it was gone. "Do you have a lawyer?" the judge asked. Malik shook his head. "No, sir." "You want the court too?" "Appoint one," Malik said softly. "I don't need one." The judge narrowed his eyes. "You plan to defend yourself?" Malik nodded. "Yes, I didn't do it." Some people laughed. A few reporters in the back scribbled in their notebooks. The judge tapped his fingers on the bench. "Everyone says that, son." Malik's voice was firm. "I didn't do it." The judge opened the file in front of him. Pages of records, police reports, photos. But then something slid out of the folder. An old photograph. It was small, a little torn at the edge. The judge picked it up. He froze it in the photo. A young woman held a baby in her arms. She was standing in front of a brick wall. The baby had big eyes, and in the corner of the photo, the name was written in pen, Asha and Malik, 2007. The judge stared at the name. His hand trembled slightly. Asha. That name hit him like a wave. A memory. A face. A moment from the past he had locked away. The courtroom noise faded. He stared at Malik again. Same eyes. Same nose. Same look of quiet fire. The judge's throat went dry, but he said nothing. He slid the photo back into the file and cleared his throat. "We'll continue next week." Bail denied. The officers grabbed Malik's arms as they walked him out. He turned once toward the judge. Just for a second, their eyes met, and in that second, it felt like something passed between them. Not words, not fear, but something deeper. Something lost. Later that night, the judge sat alone in his office. The building was quiet. He opened the same file again. He pulled out the photo. He stared at it for a long time. "Asha," he whispered. He hadn't seen her in 20 years. They had met when he was in law school. She worked in the campus library. Their time together was short but unforgettable. And then, he left, without warning, without goodbye. She had called once. He never answered. He buried the past and moved on. Now, the past was sitting in his courtroom. Handcuffed. "Is that boy my son?" he asked the empty room. His heart beat faster. He knew he had to find out the truth. But what would happen if he did? If Malik was his son, would he tell anyone? Would he step down from the case? Would he face what he had once walked away from? The judge leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Outside, the city lights flickered, and somewhere, in a cold jail cell, Malik sat alone, wondering why the judge had looked at him like that, like he knew him, like he recognized him. The courtroom was empty now. The chairs were still. The air cold and quiet. Judge Alan Brooks sat alone in his chambers. The lights were dim. Only the soft hum of the heater and the ticking of the clock filled the room. He held the photo in his hand again, the same one that had fallen from Malik's case file. Aja and Malik, 2007. His fingers trembled slightly as he stared at the baby. In the picture he couldn't stop thinking about the eyes. They were the same eyes that had looked at him in the courtroom earlier, eyes filled with pain but not fear, with strength but not hate. Those weren't the eyes of a thief. They were the eyes of a son, and that terrified him more than anything. Judge Brooks had spent years building a perfect reputation. He was known as fair, strong, and disciplined. People called him the unshakable judge, but tonight, for the first time in decades, he felt shaken. He opened Malik's file again, this time more carefully. He flipped through police reports, witness statements, and arrest details. Everything was too clean, too fast. The robbery happened at night. The suspect ran, no weapon was found, and only one person said it was Malik, the store owner. But there were no fingerprints, no camera footage, just one angry man pointing fingers. Something didn't feel right. Then tucked behind a stack of pages, he saw it, a sealed envelope, marked confidential, not reviewed. His hands paused. Slowly, he opened it. Inside were hospital documents, a birth record, a social services file. His heart began to pound. The birth certificate read, name Malik Davis, mother, Asha Williams, father, unknown. He stared at that word, unknown. His chest felt tight. He turned the page. There was a hospital note from 2004. Aja had written something in Shakia's handwriting during her pregnancy. I tried to call the father. His name is Alan Brooks. He said never to contact him again. I don't want Malik to grow up hating someone who walked away, but I can't lie to him forever. His hands dropped to his lap. His name was there, clear dot written in a mother's pain. A mother who had raised the boy alone. His son Malik wasn't just another case. He wasn't just a boy in handcuffs. He was his blood. The judge leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. Memories flooded back. Usha's laughter, her soft voice in the library, her tears when he ended things. Without explanation, he had told himself she'd move on. He never imagined she would raise a child alone, their child, and now that child was on trial, accused of something he might not have done, locked in a cold jail cell, and no one knew the truth, except the judge. The next morning, Judge Brooks didn't sleep. Instead, he went to a dusty records room in the courthouse basement, a place where old files went to be forgotten. He asked the clerk for records on Malik's case, and specifically, on the arresting officers. Something in his gut said this wasn't just about a robbery, there was more. The clerk handed him a stack of files and left. Brooks sat at the table, flipping through them quickly. He stopped when he found Officer Donnelly's report, the arresting officer in Malik's case. His record was strange. Too many cases, too many arrests, of young men like Malik, mostly poor, mostly black, and most had no evidence. Just someone's word. Brooks's hands tightened. Something was very wrong here. Then he found a complaint letter, written by a woman 2 years ago. Officer Donnelly keeps targeting boys in my neighborhood. My son was arrested with no proof. He was found innocent, but the damage was done. Please investigate this, officer. The letter was signed A. Williams. His heart dropped again. Asha had tried to fight, but no one listened. Now, Malik was caught in the same trap. Judge Brooks knew what he had to do, but fear pulled at his chest. If he spoke up, his career could be over. People would say he was biased, that he hid the truth, that he lied for years. Everything he built could fall apart. But if he stayed silent, his son could go to prison for something he didn't do. He stood up slowly and looked at himself in the mirror across the room. He didn't see the proud judge anymore. He saw a man who had run from the truth, and was now face to face with it. He whispered to his reflection, "It's time." That afternoon, Brooks called a private investigator he trusted, a man named Martin who had helped on past cases. "I need you to quietly look into Officer Donnelly," he said, "and the store owner from Malik's case." Martin asked, "You think it's fake?" "I think it's bigger than one boy," Brooks said. Martin agreed. "Give me 2 days." Brooks hung up and stared at the file again. This time, he wasn't looking at Malik like a criminal. He was looking at him like a son who needed saving, and he knew one thing for sure. If he didn't act fast, it might be too late. Meanwhile, in jail, Malik sat on his bunk. He stared at the cracked wall in front of him, thinking of his mother. She had passed away 2 years ago. Her heart gave out after too many long shifts, and too many broken dreams. He had no one now. No one. Except a judge who had looked at him strangely, like he knew something. Malik closed his eyes. He whispered, "Mom, I don't know why, but something's changing." And deep inside, for the first time since his arrest, he felt the smallest flicker of hope. The sun had just started to rise when Malik opened his eyes in his jail cell. Another day. Another cold morning. The same rough blanket, the same hard bed, and the same empty space in his chest, where his mother's voice used to be. He sat up slowly and stared at the wall. That was all he had now. Walls. No family, no friends, no freedom. Just memories. And the one name he couldn't stop thinking about. Asha, his mother, a few miles away. Judge Allen Brooks sat alone in his home office. On the desk before him were 3 things. Malik's file, a cup of cold coffee, and a yellow envelope that read Asha Williams, personal notes he had asked his investigator Martin to dig deeper into Asha's life. What Martin found made the judge's hand shake. There were notes, letters, even old voicemail she had saved and never sent. Judge Brooks opened the envelope slowly. The first letter was written in pencil on lined notebook paper. "Dear Alan, I don't know if I'll ever send this. Maybe I'm just writing it to stay sane. You left without a word. I cried for days, but I moved on. I had to. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought about calling you again. I even dialed once, but when I heard your voice on the machine, I hung up. I didn't want to beg. I didn't want to force you to care, but I wish you had asked. Your son has your eyes, your quiet stare, your fire. His name is Malik. He's smart, gentle, and stronger than he knows. I just hope life is kinder to him than it was to me." Judge Brooks felt his throat tighten. He placed the letter down gently. Asha never told anyone the truth, not because she was weak, but because she was proud. She had chosen to carry the weight herself. Even when her heart was breaking, he opened another letter, dated 10 years later. "Malik is growing fast. He's 12 now. He wants to be a lawyer. Funny, right? Just like you. He doesn't know who you are. I told him his dad wasn't ready to be in his life. He nodded, said okay, and then hugged me. That's the kind of boy he is. Sometimes I wonder if he'll ever meet you. But maybe it's better this way. Maybe you've forgotten. Just know, he's worth knowing." Judge Brooks closed his eyes. He remembered how selfish he had been, focused on his career, his name, his future. He had abandoned her, and now, 10 years later, his silence had grown into something heavy, something he couldn't run from anymore. Flashback 15 years ago. stood in a hospital hallway, alone. She had just given birth to Malik. Her hands trembled. Her body ached. But all she could think about was one thing, calling him Alan. She held her phone tightly and stared at the number. It was still saved in her contacts. Alan Brooks Law School. She dialed. It rang down once, twice. Then the voicemail picked up as voice.com/confident. She couldn't breathe. Her lips trembled. But no words came. She hung up. A nurse walked by and smiled gently. "Do you want to hold your baby again?" Asha nodded, wiping her eyes. She took Malik in her arms, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "It's okay, baby. I've got you. We don't need anyone else." But deep down, she knew the truth. One day he would ask, and she wouldn't have an answer. Back to present day, Judge Brooks turned to the last item in the envelope, a cassette tape. Martin had said it was found in an old answering machine Asha had left in a box. The tape had been recorded years ago, but never erased. He borrowed a player from the court archives and pressed play. Asha's voice filled the room. It was soft, shaky. "Alan, it's me. I know I said I wouldn't call, but I guess I don't know. I had to try. I'm pregnant. It's yours. I'm not asking for anything. Just thought you should know. I don't even expect you to call back. But I hope, one day, if you ever wonder where your son is, you'll remember this message. His name is Malik, and he deserves to be seen." The tape stopped. Silence. Judge Brooks sat still for a long time. Eyes were wet. His hands folded. He had run from his past. But now, his past had come back as a human being in chains, standing before him in court, waiting to be judged. His son, meanwhile, in jail. Malik stared at an old photograph. He kept it hidden, folded inside a library book another inmate had given him. The photo was faded. His mother held him in one arm and stood smiling, though her eyes were tired. He missed her so much. He whispered to the photo, "I wish you had told me more, Mom." He remembered asking her once about his dad. Was he a bad man? He had said, "No," she'd replied softly. "He just made a bad choice." Malik didn't know what that meant, but now, something in his heart told him the truth was bigger than he thought. That same night, Judge Brooks sat at his desk, his decision clear. He opened a new folder at the top. He wrote in bold, "Private motion. To recuse conflict of INTISTF." The court approved it. He would remove himself from Malik's case, and finally tell the truth that the accused boy was his son. But before signing, he paused, not because he was scared, but because once this truth was spoken, nothing would be the same again. And yet, it was the right thing. Asha had stayed silent her whole life, but he wouldn't anymore. He signed the document, folded it, and whispered, "I see you now, Asha. I see him." The courtroom was packed again. Cameras were banned, but journalists filled the back rows, pens ready. Everyone in the room had heard whispers about the trial. Some said it was just another robbery case. Others felt something deeper was happening, but only two people in the room knew the full truth. Malik, the boy accused, and Judge Alan Brooks. The man who now believed the boy was his son, Malik, stood in the defendant's seat. His hands were no longer in chains, but he still felt trapped. His public defender sat beside him, flipping through notes. They had only met once. There wasn't enough time to prepare. The whole thing felt rushed. The prosecutor stood up. He was confident, polished, the kind of man who believed the courtroom always belonged to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what we have here is a simple case. A robbery. A store owner. A suspect running from the scene. It's not complicated." He pointed at Malik. "That young man robbed a store, scared an old man half to death, and tried to escape. He failed. He was caught. Case closed." The jury looked at Malik. They didn't know his story. They didn't know his mother. They only saw a boy who had grown up with nothing. Judge Brooks sat higher, wearing his black robe. He looked calm on the outside, but inside, he was breaking. He had filed a private motion to remove himself from the case, a motion that still hadn't been approved. Until it was, he had to continue. But every word the prosecutor said made his heart pound harder, because he knew Malik now. He had read Usha's letters. He had heard her voice. He knew this wasn't a robbery story. This was a broken family story, a truth-lost story, and the courtroom was not ready for it. The store owner was the first witness. An older man was shaking hands. He walked slowly to the stand. "I remember the night clearly," he said. "It was raining. A young man came in. He shouted, told me to open the register, said he had a gun." The prosecutor asked, "Did you see the weapon?" "No," the man replied, "but I believed him. He reached like he had something." "And did you identify this man later?" "Yes, that one," he said, pointing to Malik. It was him. Malik didn't move. He didn't cry, but his fists tightened under the table. Next, Officer Donnelly took the stand. Judge Brooks looked at him carefully. Martin, the private investigator, had found several complaints against Donnelly, all hidden, buried, ignored. Donnelly had a pattern. He arrested poor kids, mostly boys like Malik, mostly without evidence. "Tell us what happened," the prosecutor said. Donnelly stood straight, his badge shining. "I got the call. I chased the suspect. He ran into an alley, and I arrested him." He matched the description. Tall, thin, black hoodie. He fit it. The public defender stood. "Was there any fingerprint evidence?" "No." Donnelly replied, any video footage? No. Any weapon found? No. So all you had was that he looked like the suspect. Donnelly looked annoyed. It was enough. Malik looked at the floor. He had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Again. Then something unexpected happened during a break. Malik asked to use the restroom. A guard walked him down the hallway, and as they passed, Judge Brooks came out of his office just as Malik looked up. For a split second, they stood face to face. Malik paused. Then, softly, he said something. Just 3 words. Quiet, careful, but strong. You knew her. The judge froze. He didn't answer. He couldn't. But the words struck him deep. Malik saw something in the judge's eyes, something more than shock. Something like guilt, and maybe even regret. Before the guard pulled him forward, Malik whispered, why didn't you help her? Then he was gone. Around the corner, the hallway was silent again. But Judge Brooks WASN, single quotes, TD. He was shaking the next morning. Court resumed. The defense had little to offer. Malik had no alibi. No one had seen him that night. His mother was gone. His friends were too afraid to speak. It was his word against theirs. The prosecutor smiled confidently as he rested his case. The judge was supposed to give the final instructions to the jury, but he couldn't. He looked down at Malik, and then he stood. I need a brief recess, he said. Gavel hit. The room was confused. Judge Brooks walked quickly out the side door, into his office, into silence. And there, he took out the envelope from Asha again. He read her final letter. It said, if this ever reaches you, don't protect your name. Protect our son. His hands shook. He picked up the phone and called Martin. Is everything ready? Yes, Martin replied. You sure you want to do this? Judge Brooks answered, not with words, but with a quiet, broken breath that finally carried 20 years of silence. Outside the courtroom, people wondered what had caused the delay. Inside the judge's office, a man was finally preparing to do what he should have done a long time ago. Tell the truth. Back in jail, Malik sat on his bunk. He thought of the judge's face, the way it froze, the way his eyes moved when Malik said those words. You knew her. It was a guess. A wild, impossible guess. But now, he was sure, he thought. He's not just some judge. He was the man his mother had once whispered about, late at night when she thought Malik was asleep. He had a future. I didn't want to ruin it. Now, that same man was deciding Malik's future, and maybe, just maybe, he wasn't going to stay silent this time. It was a quiet night in the city. The courthouse lights were off, and the courtroom seats were empty. But in the county jail across town, Malik sat wide awake on the edge of his bed. His heart was heavy. His thoughts were loud, no matter how hard he tried. He couldn't forget the judge's eyes, the way they shook when Malik said those 3 words. You knew her. He had seen something break inside the judge. Something real. He didn't know what it meant, but it felt important. It felt like the truth was sitting just out of reach. So, for the first time since his arrest, Malik picked up a pen, and he began to write. To the man in the robe, you don't know me, but I think maybe you did. His words were slow, simple, but full of emotion. He didn't know exactly what he wanted to say, so he started with the only thing he knew. His mother. Her name was Asha. She worked long hours. She was tired all the time, but she never complained. She told me to stay out of trouble, to dream bigger than our neighborhood, to believe I mattered, even when the world said I didn't. He paused, then continued. She never talked much about my father. When I asked, she just smiled and said, he wasn't ready. I used to think that meant he didn't care. But now I'm not sure. Maybe she was protecting him, or maybe she was protecting me. His handwriting wasn't perfect. The paper was stained from his thumb, but he kept writing. The night I got arrested, I wasn't robbing anyone. I had gone out to get food for a neighbor, a little girl who hadn't eaten all day. I got scared when the cops yelled. I ran. That was my mistake. But running doesn't mean guilty. He looked up at the ceiling. When I stood in front of you, I felt something. I don't know what it was, but it felt like you saw me. Not just the charges, not just my hoodie, not just my skin. You saw me? He swallowed. If you knew my mother, then maybe you know the kind of person she was. Honest, brave. She didn't ask for help. Not because she didn't need it, but because she was afraid of being left again. And then, Malik wrote a line that would change everything. If you are who I think you are, you don't have to stay silent anymore. Not for her, not for me. The truth won't break us. Maybe it will finally heal something. He signed it, Malik Davis. He folded the letter carefully, and the next morning, during legal mail rounds, he handed it to the guard. To the judge, he said softly, it's important. Hours later, Judge Allen Brooks sat in his chambers, exhausted. He hadn't slept much. His hand still held Usha's final note. His motion to recuse himself from the case had been denied. Too late, the court said. He had already heard too much, so now he had to see the case through, even though every part of him wanted to scream the truth. Then came a knock. A court officer handed him a white envelope, no name on the front. But the inmate said it was for you, the man said, leaving. The judge stared at it. His fingers trembled slightly as he opened it. When he saw the handwriting, he knew it was from Malik. He began reading. Every word hit him like thunder. He saw Asha in every line. Her voice, her strengths, her hope. And then he saw something else. Malik knew. He knew. The judge couldn't hold back. Tears rolled down his face, one after the other, falling onto the paper. He pressed the letter to his chest. For a long time, he just sat there, breathing, breaking, healing. That night, Judge Brooks went home and unlocked a drawer he hadn't touched in 20 years. Inside was a photograph, a younger version of himself and Asha, smiling by a library building. He whispered, "You raised him well." Then he picked up his phone and called his old friend, a reporter named Linda Chase. "I need to meet with you tomorrow morning," he said. "Is this about the Malik Davis case?" she asked. He paused. Double quotes. "Yes," he said. "And about something I should have said years ago." The next morning, the city woke up to a headline that took everyone by surprise. Judge confesses, "The boy on trial is my son." The story exploded. News stations ran it all day. The courthouse flooded with reporters. Some people were angry. Others were shocked, but many were moved, deeply moved. One line from his confession stood out everywhere. "I left Asha when I was too young and too afraid. I never went back. But I see now what she gave this world. A son who deserves to be heard, not sentenced." Inside the jail, Malik was called to the warden's office. He walked in, confused. The warden turned the screen toward him. Malik saw his own name on the news. And then he saw the judge's face. He listened in silence. His knees almost gave out. The judge, his father, had told the world the truth. No more secrets, no more silence, just truth. Malik wiped his face with his sleeve. His heart was pounding. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in his life, he didn't feel alone. The news spread like fire. Judge claims accused boy is his son. A secret from the past shakes the courtroom. Justice or scandal. The city divided. People outside the courthouse stood in crowds. Some held signs in support of Malik. Others shouted that the judge had lost his mind. Reporters gathered like bees, asking the same questions again and again. But inside the courthouse, behind thick wooden doors, Judge Allen Brooks sat alone. His face was calm, his eyes were tired, but his heart, it was finally free. For the first time in 20 years, he had told the truth. He had said the words out loud, "Malik is my son." But truth comes with a cost. Later that day, Judge Brooks was called into the chief judge's office. The room was large, cold, and filled with silence. 3 senior officials sat at the table. Their faces were tight, their voices firm. "You should have told us before," one of them said. "This could damage the court's image," said another. "You made it personal," said the third. "And personal decisions don't belong in a courtroom." Judge Brooks didn't argue. He just listened. Then the chief judge spoke quietly. "Allen, we want you to step down from the bench today." Allen looked up. "I can't," he said. "You must," the chief judge said. "If you don't, we'll make this ugly. Your name, your career, your past, it will all be questioned. Is that what you want for yourself? Or your son?" The words hit him hard, but not enough to break him. "I've been silent my whole life," he replied calmly, "and I won't stay silent anymore. If that means I lose everything, then so be it." The men looked at each other. One of them leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We know what you're trying to do. But if you speak in court again, if you say anything more about this, we'll make sure you never work again. Not as a judge, not as a lawyer, not even as a clerk." That was the threat. Clear, cold, sharp. Judge Brooks stood up. He looked each man in the eye. Then he walked out without saying another word. Meanwhile, Malik sat in jail, watching the world react to the truth. He saw news clips of people debating his case. He heard guards whispering when they passed his cell. He received a folded piece of paper from a younger inmate who whispered, "My mom said to tell you, she's proud of you." Malik was confused, but his heart felt lighter. The judge had told the truth, and somehow, the world had listened. That evening, Malik was taken to a private room. To his surprise, Judge Brooks was waiting there, without his robe. Just a man who looked nervous, tired, and ready. They sat across from each other. It was the first time they had truly been alone. Malik looked at him carefully. "You really meant it?" The judge nodded. "Every word. You're really my father." His voice cracked on the word. Judge Brooks leaned forward. "I am. I was young, stupid. I left when I should have stayed. I failed your mother, and I failed you." Malik looked down. "She never blamed you, but I think, deep inside, she was hoping you'd show up. Someday." The judge swallowed hard. I was afraid, but no more lies. Malik, no more silence." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Malik finally said, "I don't know what happens next." The judge nodded. "Neither do I, but I know I'll be by your side. Not as a judge, but as your father." The next day, Judge Brooks received a notice. He was officially suspended from the bench. His chambers were to be cleared, his office keys returned, his robe turned in. It was over 25 years of service, erased with one decision. But as he walked out of the courthouse, his head was high. He had lost his job but found his son. Outside, the media surrounded him. Questions flew. "Are you stepping down forever? Will you fight for your son in court? Do you regret what you did?" He raised his hand and said just one sentence, "I don't regret telling the truth." Then he walked away. At the jail, Malik received another letter, but this time, it was from someone unexpected. A new legal team had offered to take his case. They had seen the news, read the files, studied the evidence, and they believed in his innocence. They were preparing a new defense, one built on truth, not fear. The letter ended with, "Your case isn't about guilt anymore, it's about justice." Malik smiled for the first time in weeks. Meanwhile, in a small apartment, Judge Brooks sat alone. No more fancy desk. No more courtroom. Just a man, holding a photo of a woman he once loved, and a son he was finally ready to stand beside. Then his phone buzzed. A message from the lawyer team. "We've uncovered something. A witness is ready to come forward. A key piece of the truth." He replied with 2 words. "I'm ready." The courtroom was full again. But this time the mood was different. There were no whispers, no loud voices, just silence. The kind of silence that meant something was about to happen. Something big. People had shown up early, hoping to get a seat. Others stood in the hallway, listening through the doors. Reporters held notepads close. Cameras waited outside, blocked by the court rules but ready to roll the moment the hearing ended. In the center of it all sat Malik, not just as an accused boy anymore, but as the face of a question bigger than his case. Can the truth still win? Even when the system is broken? Malik's new lawyers, a team of 2 strong women in sharp gray suits, stood ready beside him. They had read every report, every line of the police file, every complaint buried deep in Officer Donnelly's record, and today, they were going to open those pages in front of everyone. The judge, presiding now, was someone new, an older woman named Judge Hayworth, known for being tough but fair. She entered the courtroom. Everyone rose, she gave one nod, and court was in session. The defense stood first. "Your Honor," said lawyer Rachel Clark, "we'd like to present new evidence, and call a surprise witness who has agreed to come forward." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." The room leaned forward in interest. From the back of the courtroom, a woman stood up. Her steps were slow, nervous. Her hands shook. She walked carefully to the witness stand. Malik's eyes widened. He recognized her. It was Mrs. Franklin, the old lady from his neighborhood, the same one whose grocery bag he had offered to carry the night of the arrest. She sat down, took a breath, and then looked directly at the judge. "I was there that night," she began. "Malik didn't rob nobody. He helped me. He saw me struggling to carry food. He walked with me, gave me his hoodie when it started raining." There were gasps in the courtroom. I asked him why he was out so late. He said a little girl down the hall hadn't eaten. He was trying to buy her something cheap. "Did he have a weapon?" the lawyer asked. "No," she said clearly, "just a kind heart. That's all he had." Next came Martin, the private investigator hired earlier by Judge Brooks. He had now joined Malik's defense team and was ready to speak publicly. He took the stand with confidence. "I reviewed the arrest report written by Officer Donnelly," he said. "There are major problems. The timeline doesn't make sense. The street camera footage from the next block shows Malik walking calmly, not running like the officer said. He held up photos taken from traffic cameras. The timestamp proved it. Then, he added something even more shocking. 3 other boys were arrested by Donnelly over the last 2 years, all with the same story. No weapon, no prints, no proof. Just they looked like the suspect. All charges were later dropped." The court froze. Even Judge Hayworth looked stunned. The prosecutor tried to object, but she overruled him. "Let the witness finish," she said. Martin looked over at Malik. This boy wasn't a criminal. He was just easy to blame. Then came the final piece. Malik's lawyer stood again. "Your Honor," she said softly, "we have one last item to share. A letter written by Malik himself, not as part of his defense, not for attention, but just as a voice. A letter he wrote in jail to his father." She held up the letter. The judge allowed it to be read aloud. Her voice shook as she read Malik's words. "I don't know if you're listening. I don't know if I'm worth fighting for. But I believe in what my mother taught me, that truth matters, even if it hurts. Even if it costs everything. I'm not asking for a miracle, just a chance, a fair chance." When the reading ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even some jurors looked away, blinking quickly. Judge Hayworth took a deep breath. "Court will now break while we review this new evidence." She stood and left the bench. People began whispering again. Some clapped quietly, and in the middle of it all, Malik sat with tears in his eyes, not from fear, but because finally someone had believed him. Outside the courtroom, Judge Brooks watched it all on a small screen from the courthouse hallway. He wasn't allowed inside, not after his suspension, but he didn't care. He had done what he came to do. He had spoken the truth, and now, the truth was speaking for itself. Usha's son was no longer just a number in the system. He was a name, a voice, a soul. 2 hours later, the courtroom was called back in. Everyone rushed to their seats. Judge Hayworth returned. She sat down, looked around, and then spoke. "This case is unlike anything I've seen in years. But what stands out the most is not just the evidence. It's the silence that surrounded it for so long." She looked directly at Malik. "Young man, this court owes you more than a verdict. It owes you an apology." The room held its breath. In light of new evidence, new witness statements, and clear doubts about the original arrest, All charges against Malik Davis are dropped immediately. There was silence, then applause, then tears. Malik closed his eyes. He didn't even smile, not at first. He just let the truth settle in, slowly, like sunlight after a long, dark storm. Outside the courtroom, Judge Brooks was waiting at the steps when Malik walked out with his legal team. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke. They just stood there, facing each other. Then Malik stepped forward and hugged him tightly. Tightly, and Judge Brooks held him like a man who had waited too long to do the right thing. People around them clapped. Some cried. A photo was taken that day, one that would go viral within hours. A man who lost everything, and a boy who got his life back, both finally free. The city moved on, but Malik didn't, not yet. His name was cleared. His story had made headlines. People called him brave. Some even called him a symbol. But Malik didn't feel like a hero. He just felt lost. Free. Yes, but free in a world that still felt unfamiliar. A world without his mother. A world with a father who had just arrived. 20 years too late. Judge Alan Brooks, no longer judge, stood by Malik's side every day now, but not as a legal protector, as a man trying to earn the title of father. He had lost his job, his respect in court circles, his clean image, but none of that mattered anymore, because now, he had one thing he never expected to get back: a second chance. One evening, they sat together at a small diner. The air smelled like fresh coffee in old leather booths, a place where no one asked for photos, no cameras, no headlines. Just peace. Malik stirred his tea slowly. He hadn't spoken much since the trial ended. Alan watched him, then gently said, "You can ask me anything." Malik didn't look up. "I don't know what to ask." "That's okay," Alan replied. "Take your time." They sat in silence for a few minutes, then Malik finally whispered, "Why didn't you want me?" The words hit like lightning. Hand trembled as he reached for his glass. "I didn't know how to be a father," he said honestly. "Back then, I only thought about myself, my future, my work, my image." He looked down. "I was a coward, Malik. I don't expect you to forgive me quickly, but I want you to know, if I could go back and do it right, I would." Malik stared out the window. "My mom used to sit by the window every night," he said quietly. "She never said it, but I think she was waiting for someone." Alan swallowed hard. "I should have come," he whispered. "I failed her, and I failed you." Later that night, Malik returned to a small apartment set up for him by a local support group. The city had offered help, not out of guilt, but because people cared. His legal team helped him enroll in a community college. They even set up therapy appointments. But Malik's mind wasn't on school, or awards, or even headlines. It was on Asha. He held her photo in his hands. It was old, slightly torn at the edges, but her eyes still sparkled. The same warmth he remembered. He whispered to the photo, "He's here now, Mama. I don't know what to do with that, but he's trying." Tears filled his eyes. "I wish you could see this." The next morning, Alan picked Malik up early. He didn't say where they were going, just told him, "Trust me." Malik didn't speak much during the drive, but when they arrived, his heart stopped. It was a quiet cemetery. They walked silently between the rows. Then Alan stopped in front of a small grave. Asha Williams, beloved mother, quiet warrior, eternal light. Malik dropped to his knees. His hands brushed the stone. It was the first time he'd seen her grave. For so long, she had been the strong one, the quiet fighter, the voice that held him up. Now she was gone, and he had never said goodbye. Alan knelt beside him. "I didn't go to her funeral," he admitted. "I was ashamed." Malik didn't answer. "I didn't deserve to speak at her grave back then, but now, maybe together, we can say something." Malik nodded slowly, so they spoke not loud, not perfect, just honest. They talked about her smile, her cooking, the way she used to hum while washing dishes, how she worked double shifts but never showed it, how she once stayed up all night sewing patches on Malik's school uniform. They laughed, they cried, and for the first time, it felt like she was there, not in the ground, but between them. In the weeks that followed, Malik began to rebuild. He started classes, he helped volunteer at a youth center, talking to kids who felt invisible, wrote letters to other inmates who didn't have voices. And slowly, his world changed. He still had nightmares, he still missed his mother, but he had something. Now he never thought he would, a future. One day after his evening class, Malik found Alan waiting outside. "Got time for dinner?" Alan asked. Malik shrugged. "Sure, but I'm paying this time." They laughed, a soft, shared moment between two men still learning how to be family. Over dinner, Alan pulled out an envelope. "What's that?" Malik asked. Alan smiled nervously. "It's a name change form. You don't have to sign it. I just wanted to give you the option. If you ever want to carry the name Brooks, as a choice, not as a duty." Malik held the form quietly. Then he looked at Alan. "I'm proud of my mom's name," he said. Alan nodded. "You should be," Malik added. "I think she'd want me to have room for both." Alan smiled, holding back tears. Malik folded the form and put it in his bag. "I'll think about it." The night ended with something simple. A father walked his son to the bus stop. They stood quietly, watching cars pass. Then Malik looked up. "You did a lot for the law," he said, "but I think you're doing more now. Alan chuckled. What? By being an old man finally learning how to be a dad? Malik smiled, the first real one in a long time. Yeah, he said. Exactly that. 6 months later, a graduation ceremony filled a small auditorium. People clapped as names were called. Malik Davis. With honors, he walked across the stage. Head held high, bed in the front row. Alan clapped louder than anyone. He wore no robe, no judge's ring, just a proud smile. When Malik received his certificate, he looked into the crowd and raised it slightly, not to show off but like a quiet tribute to Asha, to truth, to the second chances that life rarely gives, but sometimes, just sometimes, delivers.